Hello, I'm Jeanette Davies, and I'm a librarian from UNT. I actually did some work here in Las Vegas for the library district here, and working pretty much all segments of the library, and now I'm working at an academic library. So I wanted to share with you a few banned books that I fell in love with. So my first banned book was The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and that is the book that opened the gateway, or the wardrobe, you might say, to reading for me. So I'm going to read a tiny bit of that for you and then move on to a couple others. Just like a girl said Edmund to himself, sulking somewhere, and wouldn't accept an apology, he looked around him again and decided he did not much like this place and had almost made up his mind to go home. When he heard very far off in the wood a sound of bells, he listened, and the sound came nearer and nearer, and at last there swept into sight a sleigh drawn by 2 reindeer. That's The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis. Then I graduated onto Judy Blume. We all know Judy Blume, right? Favorite spokesperson for ALA. Anyway, so I want to share a little bit of Judy Blume's Are You There, God Is Me, Margaret. We all know that one. So, and this book basically is a rite of passage for many, many young girls. So I just want to read a paragraph of that real quick. I have a nice new suit and a small velvet hat. My mother said everyone wears new clothes for the Jewish holidays. It was hot for October, and my father said he remembered it was always hot on the Jewish holidays when he was a kid. I had to wear white gloves. They made my hands sweat, but by the time I got to New York, the gloves were pretty dirty, so I took them off and stuffed them into my pocketbook. Grandmother met me at the usual spot in the bus terminal and took me in a taxi cab to her temple. And that's Judy Blume. Then, when I became an adult, James Baldwin was my favorite. I fell in love with him and still love him today. And I was very pleased to see some of our speakers today for mentioning James Baldwin. You don't hear about him very often, but I love James Baldwin. I just love reading his text. So I'll just pick up randomly one here. And indeed, from their appearance, the sinfulness of their lives was evident. Esther wore a blue hat trimmed with many ribbons and a heavy wine-red dress. And her mother, massive and darker than Esther, wore great old pearls and in her pierced ears, and had that air vaguely descriptible and hurriedly dressed of women he had known in sporting houses. They sat in the back, rigid and uncomfortable, like the sisters of sin, like a living defiance of the drab sanctuary of the saints. Deborah turned to look at them. In that moment, Gabriel saw, as though for the first time, how black and how bony was this wife of his, and how wholly undesirable. Deborah looked at him in the watchful silence in her look. He felt the hand that held his Bible begin to sweat and tremble. He thought of joyless groaning and of their marriage, and he hated her. Then the pastor rose while he spoke and closed his eyes. He felt that the words that he was about to speak fly from him. He felt the power of God and got out of him. Then the voice of the pastor ceased, and Gabriel opened his eyes in the silence and found that all his eyes were on him. And as he rose and faced the congregation, "Dearly beloved in the Lord," he began, "but his eyes were on me. That strange, that mocking light. Let us bow our heads in prayer." And he closed his eyes and bowed his head.